Before we start talking about the very first chapter, there's one thing I want to be crystal clear. The reason I'm making these lecture videos and post them on Moodle is because together I believe we can flip our classroom. By that, I mean I expect you guys to check out these lecture videos before our class meetings. And so when you come to the class, we can spend more time talking about the challenging places and walk through the worksheets, the in-class worksheets together, and also have more interesting discussion about, the policy issues. Okay. So once again, check them out before the class. Okay, and I believe this video will offer you more flexibilities. When you work out, when you drive, when you do something else, you can also, listen to these. Okay. All right. The very first chapter, we're gonna introduce some important and basic concepts and models about economic development. Okay, and in each possible place throughout this chapter, we will also give you an overview of Asian economies. In other words, in this chapter, we're not gonna focus upon any individual economy. Okay? Instead, we will look at East, South, and Southeast Asian economies as a whole, okay? And then compare it with other regions across the globe, okay? And see if we can find something in common among these Asian economies, okay? And we will also talk about, these common features among the Asian economies. Would that be related to the Asian economic miracle? Okay. All right. The very first thing we're going to talk about is the two. You could say the similarity and the differences between the two concepts: economic growth and development. Okay? Economic growth is defined as the growing ability of an economy to produce goods and services. Here, the growing ability is determined by productive resources. Remember, in Econ 100, we said that economics is a social science about resources, okay? Especially the scarcity of resources, because we will always have limited resources. So we have to find the best possible way to, achieve efficiency, okay? More specifically here, to produce as much goods and services as possible, right? Now, productive resources, by that we mean at least four conventionally defined resources, including land, labor, capital, and technology. Okay? In recent decades, on the basis of the new evidence, economists add more on that list, including entrepreneurship, human capital, political and economic institutions, things like these. Okay, but again, traditionally we only have four. Okay, as I mentioned: land, labor, capital, and technology. Now, very briefly, I want to say that when we talk about land, we mean the surface and everything underneath a piece of land. So here we actually include all natural resources. okay, like coal, oil, these, pretty important natural resources for economic development, okay, are all going to be discussed or placed in this category of land. Labor, it's the only thing I want to mention is, it's measured with the number of hours instead of number of workers. Okay, because workers, we have part-time, full-time, right? We don't want to treat them equally, because if we want to have a more accurate measurement, then we should go with the number of working hours. Okay, and capital here, most of the time we focused upon the physical capital. By that we mean machinery, equipment, tools. Okay, these are the man-made means of production. Okay, and so we're not really referring to the financial capital like stocks, bonds, any financial assets you're holding. No, we're talking about the real stuff like real tools, real equipment, okay, or machinery. And technology means know-how, right? All right. So actually, in introductory course, we already introduced a graphical tool or model for us to show the economic growth. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys still remember that, so I put that on the first worksheet. Okay, and you guys can go ahead and do that after checking out this video. Okay, and again, that should be a very simple model. I believe it was introduced in the second chapter of your introductory course, the Econ 100. Okay, and of course we have multiple models and even theories to show economic growth on a graph. Okay, but here what I'm asking you guys to do is just the very simple one. Okay, you already learned in your intro class. Okay? If you don't have the idea, that's fine. Just come to the class and we're gonna go through that together. Okay. All right, and in terms of the measurement, we have at least two measures: nominal and real GDP per capita. Now, nominal here means it's measured in current price or current dollars. Okay, real means it's adjusted for inflation. Okay, when we look at the GDP, the real GDP means we have to pick a base year and use base year prices when we calculate the current year output. Okay. A very simple example would be if we produced 1,000 apples this year, okay, and the price of each apple this year is $1, then the nominal GDP would be $1,000, right? $1 a piece times 1,000 apples, right? However, if we choose 2010 as the base year, just as an example, okay, and we find that the price of each apple back in 2010 was 50 cents each, okay, then the real GDP this year would be 50 cents times 1,000 apples, so it's going to be only $500. Okay, now don't have the wrong impression that this means the real GDP is going to be smaller or sometimes much smaller than the nominal GDP. The comparison between the nominal and real doesn't really make much sense because it actually depends upon which year you picked as the base year. Okay, so you pick a more recent year, you may find these two are actually pretty close. Okay, so what really matters is when we look at the nominal GDP or the real GDP, we just compare it over time. Okay. All right, here per capita just means per person. That's pretty simple, per head. Okay. Now I want to ask you to also think about when we measure the economic growth, should we use the annual growth rate of nominal GDP per capita or that of the real GDP per capita? Okay, which one would give us a more accurate outcome of economic growth, right? Now, economic development is going to be much broader, okay? So it's a combination of the following. The first one would be self-sustaining growth. By that, we mean the economy should be able to grow by itself, okay? Now, United States and other advanced economies actually spend billions of dollars every year helping the developing economies in Asia, in Africa to grow. This is so-called the foreign aid program, right? Unfortunately, over time, we find some of these, the foreign aid recipients becomes, more and more relying upon the aid, okay? So they kind of lose their own capability of growing, okay? And that is not going to be considered as the developed economy, okay? So the developed economy has to be self-sustaining, all right? The second one would be the structural change of the output composition. Now, for the national output, we have different ways to break it down, but a very traditional way would be we break it down into three sectors: agricultural sector, industry sector, or sometimes called the manufacturing sector, and services sector. Okay. Now, agricultural sector is pretty straightforward, right? The difference between the industry and the services sectors would be the industry or the manufacturing sector most of the time produces physical or tangible products like toys, cars, computers, cell phones. Okay, and services sectors provides intangible services, okay, like the legal service, financial service, consulting, things like these. Okay. Now, when we talk about the economic development, we believe that an economy, especially a developed economy, should involve the structural change of the output composition. In other words, the relative share of these three sectors should evolve when the economy gets richer and richer. Okay? Now here I want to leave this for you guys to think about, how this structural change will happen. Okay, like in which way. For example, agricultural share should go up or go down when the country becomes richer. What about the industry or manufacturer share in its output? What about the services share? Okay. Now, the third one would be the technological upgrading. In other words, when we look at the developed economy, it should continuously upgrade or create and adopt the new technologies, because that is the persistent driving force of economic growth. Okay. All right. So here we also have two more which we're going to discuss in the next video. Okay, but the first three, A, B, and C, they're all about economic activities. Okay, in D and E, it goes beyond the economic activities. It look at other aspects in a developed society. All right, we're going to talk about that in the next video.